Hello and welcome to Knit.Purl.Repeat. My name is Jess and I'm coming to you from Southwest Florida. While this channel is mainly about knitting, there is occasionally some spinning, crochet, and sewing included. So if you'd like to join me for a chat, grab a project and let's get started. This is episode 13. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today, for taking some time to sit here with me while I chat about all my projects over the last 10 days. We'll talk about that in a moment. If you're new here, you will find all of my contact information and anything I talk about during the episode should be linked in the description box for this episode. I'll also put my contact information up here on the screen somewhere, probably across the bottom. I am Jess's Makes, both on Instagram and Ravelry. And the email for this channel is Knit.Purl.Repeat@gmail.com. Feel free also to leave me a comment in the comments area for this episode. Let me know what you're working on. I'm always interested to know what everyone else is working on. I mean, I sit here talking to my camera, talking to you, but I'm by myself, right? I don't have my witty banter with a sidekick. So please let me know what you're working on. I would love to know that. Okay, so this week, there's one more thing I need to talk about before I forget. I've actually lost my notes. So yeah, hang on to this episode. There might be a lot of cuts and edits. I'll warn you now. But back on episodes 8 and 9, so I think before, just after Vlogmas, back in December, I had announced a gift away for my 100 subscribers back then. And I drew a winner, but I hadn't heard from the winner, and it's been quite some time. So I have drawn another name. And it is the person whose name is up here on the screen. So please contact me by email or on Instagram or Ravelry. Let me know what your Ravelry name is so that I can get you connected with Nancy Wheeler and get you the Njord socks pattern, which was the prize for this gift away. Okay, so I tried to come to you on Friday, February 7th. Today is now Monday, February 10th, 2025. I had to wait until Friday to be able to have time to really sit down and chat with you. And of course, that meant that things just went haywire on Friday. I had one of my teens was homesick from high school. And then my husband, before he left to go to work, arranged with some guys that were here in the neighborhood to finally take out the big branches that were dangling from our live oak tree in our front yard. They had been broken during the 2 hurricanes last summer, and we're still hanging there. So there was that interruption and the noise. And then when I looked at the video, because I tried to record outside, I looked like death warmed over. So hopefully this is better today, the lighting and the sound, but you're getting what you get. This is me regardless. I am not wearing just a black t-shirt today though. I wore something with a little print on it. So, jazzing up my game instead of my normal uniform of black. So here we are anyway. So this could be, no, I'm sure it will be longer, even though my episodes are normally around 40, 45 minutes, because now I have an extra weekend and some extra projects to talk about. So let's get started. I am nearly at the end of the 2024 project recaps. So if you're new here, I did not do an all-encompassing video on everything I did in 2024 because I only started this channel in October 2024. Instead, I've been going back and talking about some of those projects a year later and just giving some feedback on them. I will link everything in the description box of the items I show here, even if I don't go into detail on them. So in 2024, I think it was basically between May to almost October, according to Ravelry, I knit 5 socks. One of them was a test knit. I will put 4 of their pictures up here, 2 at a time, because I realize that's all I can do with my editing software, at least that I can figure out to do. So, so I made these socks. I will link them below as well if you want to get more details on them. Also a test knit, but I frogged that sock because I wanted to redo the heel. So I don't have that one to show you now. So that's primarily what I knit during that time. 2 of those were travel knits. So I have, to try to keep myself from repeating it, but we did one of my bucket list trips, but as a family last June and July, and went to Australia. And obviously didn't visit the entire continent, but of course it was winter down there. So some of the things I'll talk about are related to having that seasonal change, which I actually love having winter multiple times in one year. It was fantastic. I would rather it was cold than hot, right? You can always put on your woolly layers, but you can only get so cool. I'm also almost 53 later this month. So, you know, I'm in that season of I just get hot all the time. Anyway, so anything I talk about that occurred during that time period, we were traveling. So socks, right, make sense. Socks on the airplane, bought some wool when we were traveling, made some more socks, but I don't actually have some of these because they weren't really gifted to my sister. My sister came down from Minnesota later last summer here in Florida, and you know, we had some wine, we were talking about socks, so I had her try on a bunch of socks I had made to see what fit her and worked best for her. And so some of them she liked, so she took them with her, or maybe she stole them. I'm not sure which way it is. But anyway, they're not here anymore. So I'll have those have shown, hopefully, those pictures here for you. What I will talk about are 2 other small project categories. And one of them, the first one, I also don't have because that was actually gifted up north to my sister. And that is the Pebbles hat, which is a free pattern from the Lamb and Kid Designs. The Lamb and Kid is a yarn shop that is located on Bainbridge Island off the coast of Washington State. I don't know if they have their free patterns on their shop website or if everything just links back to Ravelry, but you can go have a look there. I will warn you though, if you've never experienced the Lamb and Kids yarns or colors, you're going to be amazed and probably tempted to grab some. They're some of the most beautiful colors for yarns all in one place. So I've warned you. This hat here, my version, I did not knit in Lamb and Kid yarns. I knit this out of Malabrigo Rios, which is a worsted weight yarn, so a superwash yarn. The color is teal feather, and I used the pattern needles, the US 5 and US 6. I believe those are 3.75 and 4 millimeters respectively, because I had to look this up recently. I'm trying to remember, but I'll put it up here anyway, in case that is not correct. Or you can look on the Ravelry page for that information. So the reason I gifted this hat was I had made this for myself for our trip last winter, Southern Hemisphere winter, and I wore that the whole time, which actually I'm really amazed because it's the only hat I brought with me. And we were there for 5 weeks, bouncing around to different places every 4 or 5 days or a week, and I didn't lose it. So I'm really amazed, but it's too small for me. So it kept shooting up like this. Even though I had longer hair then, it kept shooting up over time. So I'd have it just here and then suddenly this cone head at the top. So it's gone now. But it is a really nice pattern that you work inside out and then you flip it, if I remember correctly. you flip it to the right side just before you do the crown decreases. So I think the only difference I may have made was I may have made it a little longer because I wanted it in that kind of slouchy beanie style, which it didn't come out to be because my gauge was too tight. But it was really easy, really well written. I think maybe it's 2 pages long, that's it. So really easy, nice. It'd be a good beginner project as well. You could wear it inside out. You just don't get that pebble texture on the outside if you wear it inside out. Now, would I make this pattern again? Yes. And I hope I will make it again because I would like to have a version of this hat. I don't need hats very often. I wish I did because they're just fun and easy to knit. I tend to do socks more often or shawls than hats. And now that I am having less and less and less hair, I always find that wearing a hat is more of a challenge because you need, I feel like it looks better if there's some hair exposed, right? But anyway, I hope I will make it again. If not, it would be a great gift knit. I'm not much of a gift knitter. If you don't know me, I like to really knit for myself unless it's for a baby or something where I really feel like I want to knit that gift item. Otherwise, it just feels like a chore. I don't enjoy it as much. So yes, that is the Pebbles hat. The other projects I'd like to talk to you more about, briefly, hopefully, I do have here with me. So I made Eggy the sheep in 2023 to take with me to the New York Sheep and Wool Festival in Rhinebeck, New York. She comes from this book, if you're not aware, is called Moosh and Friends by Cynthia Valle. And the little dress pattern, clothing pattern comes with this pattern and all the animals, toys in the book. So I had this made. I had made this, I didn't have it made. I made this in 2023. And so I decided Eggy needed to come with us to Australia. She's the sheep. She needs to go visit her sheepy cousins down there. But it's going to be winter, and I didn't think this was appropriate wear for the winter. So I made her some clothes, some accessories, as you do. So I made her a pair of trousers or pants, whatever you want to call them. So I used some yarn that had been sitting around for a long time in my stash. It is a sport weight yarn from Classic Elite Yarns in the Telluride in the color of violet. I'm putting them on her while I talk to you, if you're wondering what I'm doing. And I tried to make something with the patterns from the book to fit her, but Eggy's much smaller and the clothes were too big, and I was gonna make her some dungarees. I thought that would be pretty cool. That didn't work out. So what I did is I just cast on, oops, I got a string hanging out. I cast on as if I were making a sock. And so I knit the ribbing here as her waistband, and then I just kept knitting until I thought they were long enough and worked across some stitches, bound off, worked around the other side, bound off again so that I had 2 small tubes to make the pants, the legs of the pants. And then I just knit down, trying them on her until I thought it was long enough, and then just bound off so that they have little rolled cuffs. Now they are a little short-waisted, so they do kind of come down, so she needs them a little higher, but she's good. She doesn't really need me to fix those. So those are her little trousers. It's the same yarn I used to do the stripes in the dress here, so that she matches. And then also the Woolly Thistle was having a knit along for making shawls or crochet along. I had signed up for that and I had tried to make a couple of shawls or started them, but didn't like the yarn and pattern combinations. And then I just didn't have time to continue, but I wanted to make something. And I've always wanted to make I have wanted to make a hap or a half hap for quite some time, and that's on my list of things to make. So I made one for Eggy. This is it here. So I didn't use any patterns specifically. I just looked up online the kind of basic construction for a half hap. But I started, But I didn't start from the inside out and then pick up stitches. Anyway, I started up here and increased, made an I-cord edge and knit down, doing some eyelet rows, some chevrons here, and some lace at the border. So these are some wools that I had from the Woolly Thistle. And I decided to use these colors not only because they were in my stash, but also because they reminded me of the Olympic team colors for Australia. So I went a bit cuckoo maybe with the inspiration, but you know. So she had a hat to take with her, a half hat to take with her for the cold days there. So there she is. So now I have made a half hat. So she's getting better dressed than I am in some cases. Because lastly, to go to New York Sheep and Wool Festival in October of 2024, so last year, I decided that Aggie needed a Rhinebeck sweater. So I looked at the, I used the pattern for the raccoon here, and I started making a sweater like this in some stripes, and then I just extended it into a dress. And so here that is. I think I've shown it on here before. This is a leftover sock yarn from Farmer's Daughter Fibers on their merino yak nylon base, which is escaping me right now. I'll put the name up here. I think it's the Bear Paw sock yarn in this beautiful rusty coppery color. And then I just had some leftover, I think Shetland wool that I used for the stripes. And then just kept knitting until I thought it was long enough, and then bound off with a garter edge down here. I think I did an Icelandic bind off at the bottom. So that was her Rhinebeck sweater. And that's it for my 2024 recap. Next episode should be the last one because that will basically bring us up to where I started this channel. So I have one more item, that's a garment that I'll talk about next episode. So let's talk about finished objects and the most active whips that I've given some attention to over the last 10 days or so since we last spoke. And I realized one of them is drying outside, so I'm going to pause you and go grab that. It's actually a good thing I did pause you because neither of my finished objects was here with me. Right? No matter how much you think you're ready to go to record, there's always something. Okay, so last time I talked about the test knit I was doing for Nancy Wheeler for her collection of columns socks, which is a pattern that will be coming out this month in February. And I used the 3 by the Sea Designs Hocus Pocus colorway, which was their mystery sock yarn from last October. I chose to do the same column down each side of the sock, just breaks up the patterning in this highly variegated yarn. I was a bit worried about it, that it would be too dark and you wouldn't see anything. And actually I didn't like the lace panels that I initially tried using, but I really like how they turned out. So let me show you one that's not on the blocker. So there are the columns down each side. What I really like about it is that this patterning here, which are knits and purls, flattens the yarn out and then makes the central stitches that are in stockinette and the sides really stand out. So it's like you have multiple columns, which I really like that texture. So this sock is knit cuff down. It has a slit stitch heel flap, heel turn and gusset. On the back, I also chose one of the simple cable patterns here. So if you stretch it out, you can see that. And then the toe is finished as a rounded toe. And instead of doing a Kitchener stitch, which I had initially done, but something didn't look right. It created, I think I pulled too tightly or something, because it created a seam on the inside. So I decided to try out the Finchley graft again, which I haven't done often. And I really like the result of that. So I've used that in this pattern. So it's a really fun pattern. There are 6 different charts that you can use, all of them 8-stitch repeats, just varying amounts of rows and patterns, a mixture of texture cables or some lace patterns that are in there. So keep your eye out for that. It'll be coming out later this month. Right, my second finished object is very wet. It's still very damp. I finished it yesterday. Here it is. This is the Alpine Bloom hat, a pattern by Caitlin Hunter. And if you see strings hanging out, it's because I do weave my ends in before I block, but then I don't cut them until after it's blocked, so that I don't get any of those little bits sticking out. So I'll show you a little bit closer. Here's what the crown looks like. I haven't quite made it flat. Pushed it down. I do press down quite a bit. Oh, there you can see how the flowers taper at the top. Oh, I love it. This really smells of wet wool. So what did I use? Let me show you. I used lichen and lace. So I can just show you. Here's their label. This is their Rustic Heather Sport. It is 100% Canadian wool, 56 grams for 215 yards. And so I used the colorway Black Walnut and the colorway Birch. So here is what they look like individually. I've got a lot left over. Potentially I could make a second one in the inverse, but here are the two colors. So I wanted to make this hat in the black, and it's not really white, it's a natural color with the black as the background and the flowers in white. So since I do still plan to do that, I decided for this version, because I had the yarn for it, that I would do the opposite and do the lighter color as the main color and do the motif contrast color as the dark. So I cast this on Friday late afternoon. I had finished the brim. And then Saturday, I picked up and started the color work and basically got to here, about here on Saturday night, just before the crown decreases. And so Sunday morning, it was just work a couple rows, do the decreases, and I was done by 11 in the morning. So I had all day Saturday to work on it, in between doing chores, laundry, cleaning. I think I had a Pilates class, I don't know, but I was home all day otherwise. So I just kept knitting on it because it really is one more row, just one more row. Oh, look, I'm on the next row. Might as well keep going and on and on. So really simple because you're only ever using two colors at a time. There aren't too many, there are a couple places where there's some really long sections of stitches. So you would have really long floats. I did catch my floats in those cases. So here's what it looks like on the inside. So in most cases I did, but it only occurred occasionally, so I wasn't too worried about it. Plus it's a hat. Like here's a long one that I didn't catch, and it's a hat. So unless you had like a barrette or something in, I don't think it could catch on there. So I haven't been able to try it on yet. I was using this basically as my swatch to try out the needles and before I make the second one. And now I'll have, and if I do that, I will have then 2 hats to take with me when I travel, even though they're the same, that's fine. I really love it. This has turned out really well. And it was my first time using the Lichen and Lace Rustic Sport or any of their yarns. And it was very nice to work with. It just says Canadian wool, but it feels like a merino. It has that sort of dryness to it, but not scratchy, and it breaks really easily. I'm not sure what it is. It's a blend, but I don't know what exactly, but it's gorgeous. I love it. Very addictive knit, but so fast to work on because it is a sport weight as well. And I think, I can't remember which needle size you use in the pattern. I'll put that up here on the screen. But again, this is the Alpine Bloom hat because there is an Alpine Bloom tee. I believe there's a sweater. I don't know if there's anything else. There might be coming along, but I love it. I had no intention of making it until the Woolly Thistle announced they were doing their colorwork accessories knit along. And I saw the black and white version and had to have it. So I'll talk about that one a little bit later. So I did purchase this yarn from the Woolly Thistle and it had been in my stash for a couple of years. Okay, put that somewhere where the wetness isn't going to destroy anything. All right, again, I'm without notes, so I'm trying to make sure I'm staying on track. yeah, that's it for my finished objects, but now I have two. If I'd recorded Friday, I would have had one. So, hey, for delays. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting a bit punchy over here. So, whips. So, works in progress. I have three that I'm going to talk about. I was going to talk about the grid gambit, but I haven't made really enough progress to really show you anything. I did change into the next color within the hand spun, but you can just barely see it. So I want to knit some more on that before you can see it. So I haven't really given that much attention over the last 5 to 7 days. So we'll save that one. I did make a lot of progress on the Prairie Skies sweater. So I've talked about this one before, and I'm sorry if you're fed up hearing about it. I'm just slow with it. So again, that comes from this issue of Pom Pom magazine. It's the second pattern I am making from this. The Starflight socks that I made previously are also a pattern from this edition of Pom Pom. So let me show you my progress, and then I'll talk about it again. So here we are. I know it's hard to see. I think last time, I don't remember where I was last time. I remembered on Friday, but now I've forgotten. But anyway, I have finished the right side of the sweater. So I've separated for the sleeves and finished making the body on this side. I have now picked up, done most of the same, you do the same process on the left side of the sweater. So I've split for the sleeves, and I'm almost done with the short rows on the left side. So very soon I will be connecting them here at the point, and then I'm all set to knit the body in the round. So for those of you who are new here and don't know about this pattern, you start off by crocheting a bunch of these granny squares and then sewing them together, and that creates the yoke. So you have this V-neck in the front, and then the back also turns out to be a V shape. And so essentially what you're doing is you pick up stitches along the edges of the yoke and create another triangle, but upside down, in order to, with short rows, in order to fill in that space between the front and back points. And you do it for each side and then work in the round. So once that I move on with that, if I get to the end of this ball of yarn, I'm going to stop and go and make the neck ribbing, because I can't even really try it on now for fit because it's not gonna sit right. And I want that done before I pick up for the sleeves. Now I say if I run out of yarn there, because I still have all of this remaining. So I mentioned before that I was on the fence about this pattern. So when I went to the store closest to me, which is Joann Fabrics, and went looking for some wool yarn, so this is worsted weight. I wanted Patons. I knew they carried Patons wool there, but they didn't have any dark colors. And I really prefer this pattern in the dark colors compared to the light colors. So I did go with the intention of buying wool. They didn't have the colors I wanted, so I looked to the side and they had all of this yarn from Lion brand that caught my eye, and I thought, oh, but that's not wool, and no, it's not. It is this, which is called Respun. Yes, it's 100% recycled polyester. So, not really a fan of this material, but I thought, you know, let's do it and try it out, because if it doesn't work out, I can turn this into hats or a blanket or something like that, right? A cushion, covers, whatever, something. Also because this comes in, so it's 284 grams, you get 658 yards. And I got 2 of them, and it cost me $8. So it was worth the gamble, just to see if I really like it. I know it's a gamble too, because even if I like it, am I gonna make it again? Well, that depends on how much I love it, right? As I work on this more and more, I'm realizing I really like this. So we'll see what it looks like when I wear it. But I can imagine this in one of those woolen spun, so really light and airy wools, or a wool cotton blend in a dark chocolate brown. Oh, I would love that. So if anybody out there wants to make that happen for me, just saying. But I am really enjoying it right now. So again, that's the Prairie Skies pattern. Yeah, right. So hopefully next time I talk to you, I'm on the body at least, but it could be some time yet. This is not a fast project for me, but when I pick it up, I love to work on it because it's not a difficult project. It is almost a mindless project, with the exception of keeping track of those short rows so I don't mess that up, which I have. That's why I'm saying it. All right, so that was whip number 1. Whip number 2 are my socks for the Farmer's Daughter Fiber Sock Squad for 2025, and it's the February colorway. So it is now past a week into the month, so I'm going to talk about them. But if you don't want to see it, hear about it, that's true of any content here, but specifically this project, then in the description box, you will find timestamps, or there should be timestamps if I remember to put them in. You can jump ahead to what I will label as whips part 2, and that will pick up after I talk about these socks. Okay. So I think I showed you last time the inspiration art for this month's colorway. So this came from the planner that comes with the subscription if you signed up before 2025 started. So according to the blurb, it says this month's yarn is inspired by the reflections we find in nature. So the color is Luna Moth, and it's on their Bighorn sock base, which is I believe it's a 75/25 superwash merino nylon. It's already wound up because I've already been knitting with it, but here is the Luna Moth main color. It's coming up pretty accurately, and this was the contrasting mini. Shown here, so it's this kind of peachy beige color. It's looking a bit more apricot on screen, but I think it's a bit more pale in person. So I wasn't sure what socks I was going to knit with this. It is next to Skin Soft, and there are several squatties who are making cowls or camisoles, but a lot of other people are also doing color work, which I wasn't sure about at first, but it definitely shows up really nicely in color work. I went through about 6 patterns before I picked one of them as my final pattern. Because I didn't want to do color work. Oh, I'll do texture. This would look great in textured socks. But while sitting here one night on this sofa, I realized that, yeah, here we are again. It's a shorter month. So we're missing those 2 to 3 days. Makes a difference in knitting, right? So how can I get these done before the end of the month? And of course, it dawned on me, why don't you make DK socks, right? Hold a double, they'll be fast. But then I thought, wait a minute, I had just seen one of the episodes from the Knits and Pieces podcast here, the Knit Chat Cafe on Tuesdays. They have several times made the Indoorsy socks, which I'll put up here. It's a free pattern by Sonder Yarn Co. So you hold a fingering weight sock yarn with a strand of lace weight mohair or other fluff to get these really cozy socks. So I decided, yeah, let's do that because it's DK and cozy. Perfect. The only problem was I knew I didn't have a lot of darker mohair or alpaca floof lace weight left over, but I did have some of the leftovers from my cloud drift cowl that I made last fall. So that's a pattern by Gudrun Johnston, and it was a color of silk mohair. I'm looking for it now. There it is. It was dyed specifically to match one of the main colors in that cowl kit. So I got that kit from the Woolly Thistle, and here is the mohair. So this is a Madeline Tosh mohair silk, and it matched really well with the Spindrift main color in that cowl kit. As an aside, Gudrun now has a YouTube channel called, I think it's called Shetland Trader Chats, or Chats from one of those two things. I will link that below. I think she has 4 episodes now. Go check that out. It's really good. She tells a lot about, as a spokesperson for the Jameson's yarns. She of course talks about those, but she also talks about Shetland Trader and other things. There's also, she's putting out a test knit call for a garment, so go check that out. Okay, so back to my socks. So I knew I had this color and I thought that would work actually really well. I thought they paired really well together. So this is a bit warmer, more goldeny, bronzy colors than this kind of more greenish tone, but I thought they would work well together. The main issue is I only had about half of that 25-gram hank remaining. And so I was pretty sure I'm probably gonna run out of this, but I'd wing it, I'd risk it and see what I could do. So here's what I've got so far. Oops, I'm all tangled up now, of course. Here we go. So here's what I have so far. Of course, the camera's making the detail really sharp contrast, but hopefully you can see maybe against my shirt, the fluff coming off the sides of it, that little halo. So I'm just doing it per pattern, no slip stitch on the heels, but doing a heel flap, heel turn, and gusset. I chose to do the 2x2 rib cuff. The other option in the pattern is to just do a rolled cuff. And then the other options are to do all over stockinette or do ribbing, but only on the front. I like ribbing in the sock, but I didn't want it just on the front. And I just really didn't feel like having a really fitted sock to do ribbing all over. I wanted it to be that looser, cozy, sitting on the sofa kind of thing. So I'm just going straight up stockinette. So I have about 1.5 inches to go before I start the toe, and I'm already down to only having 7 grams of this left. And this is sock number 1. So I started with roughly 14 grams, 13, somewhere in there. So I've already used half of it, and I'm not done with the sock. So I think instead of making it a patchwork and the other sock being patchwork and weird, I've decided I'm just going to finish this sock with what's left here and then figure out what I'm going to do for sock 2. So sock 2 is not going to be an identical match to sock number 1, and that's okay. They're going to be indoor hang-around socks. It doesn't matter. I do have some of this kind of color here. It's much lighter. There we go. It's kind of a taupey beige color. Definitely much lighter than this one. So I'm not sure what to do with the second one. If I'm going to use the leftovers, the cuff, and then do the rest of the sock, or if I'm going to try to pick one of my other mohair silks or alpaca floof. Problem is I either have much lighter colors or I have black. So I don't really want that marled effect. So I'm not sure what will happen there. I'll pick something and just go with it, but we'll see. So again, those are the Indoorsy Socks, a free pattern from Sonder Yarn Co. All right, on to my last whip is also a new cast on from the last time we chatted. I have no idea why I cast this on, how this started. I know why I cast on. I have no idea really why I decided to swatch for this pattern, but there's a little backstory here to this project. So you might want to skip ahead a bit. There might be a lot of cuts and edits here because it could be long. I'm going to try to summarize my personal curse when it comes to making a crocheted sweater. So yes, it's a crocheted project that I'm actually really, really loving to work on. So let me start it off on the positive before I give you some of the negative background to it. So my challenge with crochet sweaters isn't crocheting, because I have crocheted for almost as long as I've been a knitter. I have crocheted lots of things, mostly accessories, but then also, including bags and shawls and wraps, but also cardigans and shrugs. I've only crocheted one actual top. It was tapestry crochet, but I ripped that out, I think last year, because I never wore it. So part of my issues personally with me wearing and making crochet garments has partly been the patterns themselves. Often, at least in the past, because not so much today, there wasn't a lot of shaping involved in these sweaters. Sure, I could have tried to figure it out myself, right? Instead of moaning, complaining about it, but that was just one issue of several. So there wasn't a lot of shaping, And I just learned for myself, I wouldn't wear them if there's a lot of gaps or holes, like lacy. I loved working with it. I love making lacy stuff, but I just wouldn't wear it as a garment. So that was a problem. Also, in order to get rid of those gaps, then you're either using a thicker yarn, picking your yarn thickness and stitch style to try to eliminate that. That often meant that either it's now too warm for me or it becomes stiff and rigid. Of course, part of that is also your yarn choices, right? So there were those issues. And then I think lastly was the amount of yarn. So even if I found a pattern I liked and a yarn that I thought would work, crochet, as you probably may be aware, maybe not, uses about 15 to 20% more yarn than knitting. So for example, if I knit myself a shirt like this, but knitted, fingering weight, I can get away with 2 hanks of fingering weight yarn. So that 400 to 460 yards per hank. So I can get away with 2 of those. I'll probably even have leftover. But to do the same thing in a crochet top probably requires me to have, if not 1 more, probably 2 more hanks. So almost, 1 to double the amount, depending on what you're doing. So I never really often had that in my stash that would work. That would work for me. The colors, even if you wanted to combine it, make it scrappy, it just wasn't going to work. Or the cost, right? To get the stuff I wanted, that costs a lot more to crochet garments. So those were all kind of my hang-ups. But I was still on the lookout for it. I still wanted to make one. I wanted to make some to wear for New York Sheep and Wool last year. That didn't happen. I bought yarn online, thought it would be great for a project, swatched with it, and it was a fail. So I found another pattern that I really liked and thought, oh, surely this yarn will work for that. So bought the pattern, started swatching with it, and no, the fabric isn't going to work. It's not good. That is actually another side to the crochet projects, is buying the patterns. So I find when I look on Ravelry at the pattern pages, there's often not enough information on that pattern page to really help me decide if that pattern is going to work for me, if the yarns I have are going to work for me, what I need for that, until I purchase the pattern, only then to be disappointed that it's not going to work. And then that pattern sits there in my library for who knows how long. I find that knitting patterns tend to give you more information and never something that's going to give away the whole pattern, right? So they're keeping enough back that you can make decisions about it even before you purchase the pattern. So I did stop purchasing patterns because I was going down this spiral of just spending money and it was unproductive. So for some reason, now we're up to what happened with this project. Saturday last week, so not this weekend, I don't know what I was doing. I was making something. I was in front of my computer, happily working away on something. And for some reason, I decided to swatch for a pattern that I had purchased. And it's this one here, the Amiata Pullover by Nomad Stitches. I had seen this one and thought, okay, I decided not to buy any more patterns, but by looking at this one, I decided, okay, it's fingering weight, it's long sleeve, the texture is interesting, the fit looks interesting, and it looks finished and polished enough that I could dress it up for work or it could be casual. So in my quest for making fingering weight, long sleeved tops to throw over things that is just about the right warmth for me, that kind of hit the spot. And there was also a crochet along happening and a pattern sale. So I thought, fine, I'll buy the pattern. I'll figure out the yarns. So the yarn, I can't remember what the yarn was called for, but I know the Woolly Thistle carries it, who I shop from most often online, or others, but I couldn't find a color that I really wanted to work with, and I get stuck with that, of course, is an issue too. Getting that right color and buying it online off this, seeing the color on the screen. So I thought, all right, we'll pause on that until I get the color I want, but maybe I'll start using the pattern yarns or the ones used by their testers, right? So that I think I'm going to like the result before I go and buy a bunch of yarn. For whatever reason, I had this yarn that I talked about last time sitting next to me. And so this was the, upside down. This was the Charlemont from Valley Yarns from the Webb's Yarn Company. This is a, as you hopefully you can see on there, I don't know if you can, it is a extra fine superwash merino mulberry silk polyamide blend in the color mulberry. So I had bought this with hopes to make the Sweet Melody top, a pattern by Libby Johnson. I'm not making it with that because for that pattern, I want a yarn that has a higher silk content. This is 20%. I really want something that has more than that for that pattern specifically. So I had 3 of these and they are 439 yards each. But I thought, oh, that's a nice, just swatch with this. Let's see how that works, right? It's a fingering weight. Let's see if this fiber content would work for this sweater. The pattern calls for a US hook size E, which is 3.5 millimeters. Now, hook sizes, numbering naming system, I find extremely confusing because millimeters are fine. Millimeters are millimeters, right? That's it. That's the hook size. But sometimes there are letters. Sometimes there are numbers. Sometimes there's nothing. And sometimes there are letters and then you see multiple millimeter sizes for that same letter. So anyway, 3.5 millimeter needles. The only ones I had in that size was this one, this cheap aluminum thing that I think came in an amigurumi kit. It doesn't even have a brand or anything on it. It's just, it actually does say at least 3.5 millimeter. So I thought, let's just swatch. For whatever reason, I thought that was a good idea. So I did. I started swatching right away, annoyed, because this was splitting the yarn over and over again. But I thought, that's fine. It's just a swatch. If it doesn't look great, that's fine. Because I'll just have to, if I want to make it, I'll look for a different hook. So I actually first started with the 3.75 millimeter because I found in the past that I crochet tighter than most pattern gauges. But that was actually too big. So I did get gauge with the 3.5 millimeter, row gauge as well, which is unusual for me with crochet. Usually I'm too short on that. I really loved the pattern as it was coming up and with this yarn, and not to make a pun, but I was hooked. I was hooked. Like, I need to make this and in this yarn. So while I was still swatching, I contacted my friend Liz, who does lots of crochet, and asked her about her favorite crochet hook brands. Because if I'm going to make this thing, I'm not making it with this. One, it is splitting the yarn, and that will drive me nuts. It also makes me have to go extremely slowly to fix it or avoid it. And I know from experience that these hooks will hurt my hand. I get the bundle of nerves in my hand get sore to where you can't even touch the palm of my hand. So I knew I needed something different. So while I was waiting for Liz to get back to me, I had a look on Amazon. And before I go any further, I am not sponsored by Amazon, Joann Fabrics, any of the manufacturers they talk about here. I'm sponsored by me. I am my own sponsor. But I went on Amazon and I found, several options, of course, on there. I didn't want plastic and was looking for what kind of stuff is out there. And I came across this one, which is called by Tulip, which is called Etimo Red. And this is what it looks like here, if you can see that. It is an ergonomic needle hook. All right, I will say this. I apologize if I use the wrong terminology. I am a knitter who crochets. So if I say knit, I mean crochet here. And if I say needle, I meant hook. I did better on Friday, promise. Anyway, it is a little ergonomic, but it's not too squishy. It's really light. It's pretty firm actually, and just light enough to hold it. That's what the head looks like. So it's not in line. This is quite slick. It is aluminum, but it's not super slippery. It's just enough that it's smooth. Crocheting with this is smooth. I have never split this yarn so far using this hook. So I've really enjoyed it, and it's been really just been a really nice experience. So I'll show you how far I've gotten and talk a little bit about what I've done to modify a few things. That's probably also a challenge for me with crochet. I'm not really sure how to modify the patterns to fit. So I'm a bit nervous about like yoke depth and sleeves and things like that, but we'll figure that out as I go along. So there we go, the right side. So you cast on here, because I've already started. Let me fold it back a bit to see where it started. All right, so you start back here. Here's where I made the first modification, was starting. So the pattern has you chain a specific number of stitches and then work a single crochet all the way across. I know in my experience, that is bad for me. I'm sloppy, it's messy, it's too tight, it never turns out nicely. So I did a foundation single crochet, and I just went super slowly because I was using my fully aluminum metal hook. And so if it did split the yarn, it made a mess, I just undid it, went back, tried to keep that chain at the bottom the same as the tension at the top with the stitches. So I did that as a little modification, but I think it comes out nice and stretchy. Here is the pattern. So it is a mixture of single crochets, double crochets, and some double crochet clusters. So using US crochet terminology. So remember the whole gap issue. So I know there are some gaps, of course, between these cluster stitches, but I don't think, right, you don't really, it's not like it's see-through. While I was making the double crochets, so I see those more here across the top, right, you have more of that gap. What I did when I got down to here, I don't know if you can see the difference between this row here and the other row on the other side of those clusters, is there are more gaps up here than there are in here. And that's because that gap difference between the double crochets is, I remembered that I saw somewhere a tutorial, probably on Instagram, one of those quick tutorials or somewhere, about making linked double crochets. So that's where you use the bar of the previous crochet to start the next double crochet instead of doing a yarn over and going straight into the next stitch. And it just brings those double crochets, fills in that gap a little bit more. So it makes it a bit more of a kind of sturdier fabric. So I was concerned though that that was going to change my gauge, but it didn't, that I could measure. And then I checked after doing it for a while, what if it changed though the look and appearance of the texture of the pattern in a way that wasn't good? So you work the double crochets are always worked on the wrong side of the fabric. So when I turned it over, I found that I don't think it took away from that at all. So this is the start. This is a bit more flat, I think. Once I did the linked double crochets, I think these double crochet clusters really stand out, and I think it makes this beautiful texture. And plus, look at that yarn, right? Drapey. So not so drapey. I didn't want it to be a flowy garment, right? It is a sweater, but I didn't want it to be rigid and stiff, which is some of my past experience with crochet for me and the yarns I was using. So I'm really, really enjoying this. I have gone and so you increase along the back and then you go straight and then you pick up for each of the shoulders and you do some shaping. So this is the left shoulder and now I'm on the right shoulder. So I think that's a really interesting construction. It gives almost this raglan line across the back, which I guess in some ways it really is. So I'm just going with it each step at a time and seeing what happens. I'm hoping at some point I'll be able to try it on to check for the upper arm circumference and where I can make any changes if I need to. I won't really know until I get really into it and understand the pattern. I have looked through it, but I need to see it to really see what's happening with the design, the construction, to see where I can make increases if I need to. One nice thing with the crochet that if I need to rip back, it's very easy. You just pull out that string, right? It's one stitch at a time. And so ripping back, it's not fun. You can't just drop down like when you drop a stitch in knitting. You have to rip out that entire piece of work, but you can just rip back. And it's not mohair, so it's not too bad. There is a dark side to this, and that is something I mentioned earlier about yarn. I only have 3 of these. I need 4.9 according to the yardage estimate for the size. I'm not going to do the croc size, and I don't want to do a full, I think it's 15 inches from the underarm for the full size. I want something in between. I like around a 12-inch size, but that still means I need between 4 and 5 hanks. So I went online, back to the yarn shop website, and guess what color is now out of stock? Yes, this color, out of stock. So I keep hitting it to say, checking every day to see if it's in stock. Notify me when it's available. I've gone to eBay, came up on eBay. Somebody had 1 hank. I know they're gonna be different lot numbers, but I'm hoping it'll work out. I did go to Ravelry over the weekend and found a couple of people that have it in their will trade or sell for it. Most of those were single skeins again. There was somebody that had 2, but the photo made it look really purpley, where like a light purple. So I don't know if that's their photo or that is actually the color theirs or not. Somebody had 5, so I'm waiting to hear back from some of those knitters or makers and see what they say about price and so on. Because even if those last few are different, hopefully that could just be in the sleeves, or I can hide it somewhere in there. I don't know. If you are someone that has this yarn in the color mulberry, so that's color number 4, and are willing to trade or sell or whatever to me, please drop me a message somewhere and let me know. I need 2 more of these. Okay, but I'm still going. My friend asked if I felt like I was running headlong into about to hit a wall or a door. I don't remember what she said. I said, not yet, because I'm having so much fun. So maybe this is like that toxic condition where you know you're doing something that isn't going to turn out well, but you don't care because it feels so good. I don't know. That's kind of how it feels right now. But I'm also optimistic that eventually I will be able to get some more yarn, just knowing that it's not going to be the same lot number, but hopefully it's close enough and that it'll work out. Because I want sleeves, right? I need some sleeves. So cross your fingers for me, or help me out if you can, and let me know. So that's it for works in progress. I need to just keep working, plugging away on these and some of my other whips that have been lingering. So not the long-term projects like blankets and throws. They don't count because they're long-term projects with no fixed deadlines. So the last part is, because now I'm almost up to an hour. I told you this would be longer. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It's just how it is. Acquisitions and future plans. So I did get the yarn for making another alpine bloom hat. So in this version, so this is natural. This one's very yellow. It does have a very yellow tint to it. So it is a natural wool color. So doing it in this black is the main color and this as the flowers. So that will be cast on at some point. So this is Wool Dreamers Cautiva, which is 100% local wool. It is 186 yards for 50 grams. So it is a sport weight yarn. So I haven't worked with this before. I'm looking forward to it. Feels very nice. Oh, the last feature cast on is a gnome, right? So I need to pick a gnome pattern to go with my leftovers of the sock yarn from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers. That's my self-imposed plan this year. Also as part of the Year of Gnomes that Sarah Shira of Imagined Landscapes is hosting. And this is her publication. So since, again, it's the shortest month of the year, I'm going to make the smallest gnome. And the smallest gnome is Noodles. And this is what Noodles looks like. So I'm going to make her using my leftovers from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers. I don't know if I'll do the same beard that's in here, or I might use one of the beards I've already made, because I'm now starting to have a collection of beards. Yeah, this is how your life goes after a while. Who doesn't have a collection of little knitted gnome beards? I had to try them out on my last one. So that's what's coming up. There are other things down the line, but not for several months yet. So that's where I'm going to stop today. Thank you so much for joining me here for this chat. If you stuck with me, congratulations. Thank you so much, though, for taking your time for this chat as I sit here, hopefully not talking to myself, and that you found some time throughout your day, every day, at least a few minutes to do some crafting. So until I see you next time, take care.